I'm just going to share my screen with you guys here. Can you guys see that okay?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Got it.
All right. So like the title says, we're going to be going over establishing routines at home using basic reinforcement techniques to promote positive change. So in this slideshow, there's a little bit of applied behavioral analysis in here to help you with that reinforcement of getting that routine going and keeping it consistent. So the first step to any routine is setting goals. And if you don't set a goal, there's kind of challenges around there not being concreteness of what you need to be doing in the week or each day, and it kind of just being very abstract and confusing for both adults and children. So identify the goals is important. You can come up with personal goals as well as family goals. It's really important to come up with those family goals because we are at home with our families right now, and a lot of us are working from home. So having that kind of group goal setting as well as the individual goal setting is kind of beneficial for the family as well as yourself. So I have some examples here in the slideshow that you can kind of use or create your own. And here I just have the rundown of SMART goals. So these are the 5 tips that you want to use when creating goals to make sure that they're concrete and that the family understands them and that you're able to accomplish them on in an easier way because you have the clear boundaries and the clear description of what you want to achieve, whether it's daily or weekly or monthly. So here is the outline of a basic routine that you can use. They're very customizable, obviously, to your family. So when you're creating the routine, you can use visuals, or if your child isn't really as receptive to them, you can also look at just creating kind of a verbal step-by-step of what is expected in the morning. Timers are very helpful for that as well. If you don't have a timer, you can utilize your cell phone, the microwave timer, the oven timer, kind of whatever you have on hand. So important things of the routine is outlining the things that have to happen every single day. So you obviously have to get up, you have to have breakfast, you have to eat those meals throughout the day, but there's also areas where you can kind of leave it a little bit more lax to fill in fun activities throughout the day. So just make sure you set clear boundaries, and it's important to keep the timings consistent as well, because it allows the child to know exactly what's coming step by step. Now, when you do have an empty slot for a routine and you are looking to insert an activity, it's important to communicate to your child, usually the day before, as well as leading up to that activity, what they can expect, just so they have an idea that the routine is pretty much the same, but they do have a new activity or a new fun thing they have to do. So kind of using that verbal communication to allow them to know what to expect is very helpful. So you can add a lot of things to your child's schedule to fill it up. It kind of depends on what your family is doing and what the routines are like, but you can put in the chores that is expected, and you can put time frames in as well, so that you're not telling your child, okay, you need to do this, and then they have the whole day to do it. You can say, okay, at 9:30 a.m. you are going to make your bed and you're going to put your clothing into the dirty laundry basket. Um, and that just kind of helps give them a concrete idea of what's expected, and they don't have to kind of go with the thought of, okay, I have to do this, but there's so many other things I'm going to do, because at the end of the day, there's a possibility that that chore is not done or that activity is not completed. And you don't want to be telling your child to clean their room at 8 o'clock at night before bedtime. So it's important to set those time boundaries in place daily. For the more lax inserts in your routine, when you're coming up with activities such as if you're going to do yoga or go for a walk and things like that, you can be a little bit more abstract with the timings, just because it's good to have freedom in a routine. It gives a child an outlet to express their energy. So it's helpful to have an array of things to offer through the routine. So I'm just going to briefly go over what applied behavioral analysis is and how these techniques can help you. So basically, it's a fancy word that just explains that you're observing behavior and you're using techniques to either stop behavior that is negatively impacting the child, or you're motivating the child to perform a behavior that they may not be familiar with or they may not perform often, if that makes sense. So in this workshop, we're not going to go into much depth with the applied behavioral analysis in the form of stopping negative behavior, sorry. And that's just because it does take a lot of practice, and it does take a lot of kind of research-based reading and stuff like that. So we're going to focus on the reinforcement, which is shown to give positive change with routines, and give the positive outcomes that you're looking for. So the 4 basic terms that you should be familiar with when you are going to use reinforcement for your child is the ABCs, and that's the antecedents, behaviors, and consequences. So the antecedent, it's what is leading up to the behavior. So for example, in here I have brushing teeth. So you would say to your child, okay, it's time to brush your teeth. Now, the behavior is in the child's control, obviously. So you're either going to get the response of, okay, I'm going to go brush my teeth, or you might get a little bit of defiance, or you might get the, okay, I'll get to it in a minute. So when that behavior comes out, how you react to it is what is going to make the completion successful, if that makes sense. So when you ask your child to brush their teeth, if there's no kind of form of reinforcement, if there's nothing that leads up, that follows that behavior that you're asking them to complete, they're going to kind of look at you and be like, well, why would I do that? Because I'm going to brush my teeth and nothing's going to come of it. So it's important to provide that reinforcement. It can be really simple, such as, okay, if you brush your teeth, then you can have 15 minutes on the iPad, or 15 minutes of TV time. Or you can use the consequence of, okay, they didn't want to brush their teeth. Well, then you can look at maybe taking something away. So until you brush your teeth, unfortunately, you will not be getting 15 minutes of TV time until your teeth are brushed. And then there's the term of reinforcement, which is obviously what you're going to provide in order for that behavior to be completed. Some children go with easy reinforcement, such as a high five. Other children, it has to be a little bit more enticing. So you might have to give electronic time, a toy they like, or maybe a piece of candy, depending on if they're allowed to have that. So reinforcement, when creating a new routine, it's very important to provide the child something to look forward to. So that's the basic premise of reinforcement, is providing that child something that they can be very excited for after completing a task. Usually gives them the motivation to complete tasks that they may not want to do, because let's be honest, chores and stuff like that aren't really fun, especially when mom or dad is home and all the siblings are home and there's a lot of hustle and bustle in the home. Um, so it's important to apply that reinforcement consistently so that those unwanted behaviors kind of diminish and the wanted behaviors start to happen a little bit more. Um, so finding the reinforcement, there's a lot of exploring that you need to do with this. It doesn't work usually on the first try. I will say that now, just in case you try to give a piece of candy or something like that, and they're just like, absolutely not, it's not going to work. It could take several days to do this, because you have to find that sweet spot, that reinforcement that they really want to accept and they really like. So an example of this is uh, a client of mine uses a specific toy that their child likes. And this toy, they actually took away from the playset. And the only time this child gets the toy is when they complete specific tasks that are asked of them. And that toy is such a high reinforcer to them that as soon as they see it, they're like, okay, I will complete it. I will do what you're asking me because I really want that. Now, giving a time limit to reinforcement is important as well. If you're going to give an item, such as a toy or something, or some form of reinforcement that's tangible that you can give to the child, you need to give it a short time period to take it away to keep the novelty still there. So if you are going to provide time on the iPad or a toy, just ensure that when you are giving it to the child, you're taking it away after, let's say, like 5 minutes with the toy, or like 10 minutes with the electronics that you're going to give. Just make sure also, it's like I said, you have to find that sweet spot, because you also don't want to give it too short of time, because they're not going to want to complete that behavior moving forward if they know, okay, I'm only going to get 3 minutes of my iPad. So it's a lot of trial and error to figure out what is a comfortable spot. So please don't feel discouraged when you are working on a routine and it's taking 4 or 5 days for your child to actually brush their teeth or to complete that chore that you're asking them to complete. An important thing to also remember is behavior is a form of communication. So a lot of behaviors over time can obviously become frustrating for the parent or the caregiver, because you just don't sometimes understand why they're doing what they're doing, or why they're feeling the way they're feeling. So it's important to note that when there is tantruming, hyperactivity, outbursts, yelling, running away, you know, maybe less energy, so laying in bed or kind of sitting in a corner quietly. It's your child's way of communicating. So it means that there's something going on that's either kind of creating a hypersensitivity or creating kind of an overwhelming feeling that they have, and their outlet is that form of behavior that they're showing you. So it's important to observe what you're seeing and readjust your approach when these types of behaviors occur. So sometimes it could be just the way you've approached the child to ask them to do something. Maybe they were in the middle of finishing their breakfast and you asked them to brush their
Okay,
teeth,
see you, Mona.
and they're trying to figure out, why am I being asked to brush my teeth when I still have 4 more bites of my breakfast? So finding that timing, and ensuring that you're not giving an array of things to do at once, so it's not overwhelming and they're not having to process so much information in their head all at once. So it's very important when they're communicating their behavior, just taking a step back for a moment and thinking, as a whole, of, okay, what could be done differently next time? Why may they may be feeling the way they're feeling, and what can I do to help them? Um, so with that, it's also important for parents to give themselves kind of a moment to re-energize and to take a break. So with the behavior being a form of communication, it's really important that you're not kind of fighting fire with fire. So depending on the behavior that's happening, if you can take a moment to take a step back and allow them to just have that outlet, it's important to do that, because then it gives you a moment to kind of gather your thoughts and gather the response you're going to give to your child. It's important to also pay attention to your body language, your tone of voice, and your posture, because children pick up on that very quickly. And if they realize that you're upset and you're maybe feeling a little bit angry or anxious, they're going to feed off of that. And that might make them, feel a little bit more frustrated or overwhelmed, and that could escalate the behavior. So if it is safe to do so, give them a couple minutes to just kind of down regulate while you take a step back and think about the situation. It's also important to set limits when you're doing this as well. So like I said, expressing behavior is okay, but you need to give options for acceptable behaviors. So when the child down regulates and you have a moment to communicate with them after, maybe communicate with what they can do instead next time. So for example, I had a client who they couldn't figure out why their child was destroying things. The child would go around and just kind of break things when they were feeling overwhelmed and anxious. And with that, we just communicated about ideas. So she communicated with her child and just said, next time that you're feeling this way, how about you go kick the soccer ball really, really hard, or you take your slime and throw it on the ground really, really hard, because the outlet for that child was to break something or just kind of get that energy out. But giving them an avenue to let that energy out is really important, so they know what is acceptable, and next time they may be more likely to reach for the items to do that, because you've given them the tools to go, okay, it's okay to be angry and frustrated, and it's okay to take it out on slime, let's say. So they have their slime and they can just throw it around outside or throw it on the ground. And there's lots of different examples you can use as well, depending on what the behavior is that they're expressing. Um, it's also important not to take behaviors personally. So oftentimes it's easy for us to go, okay, I'm taking that personally because they said some hurtful words to me, or they released kind of their anger on me. And that can be very, very frustrating and overwhelming to parents and caregivers. So with that, it's important to also realize that it's not personal. It's just their way of expressing that behavior. And it's important to take a step back, like I said beforehand, just to give yourself a minute to debrief. If you need to go for a bathroom break, just to go in the bathroom and take 2 minutes, that's okay. It's important to know that you are able to take a step back. You don't always have to be right in there and trying to de-escalate them quickly if you need a moment for yourself, because at the end of the day, your energy preservation is really important because you need that energy to get you through the rest of the day. So taking care of yourself through that is very, very, very important. Um, So for routines and when you're building the routine, it's important when you're anticipating a change in the routine to be specific and communicate to your child really well and beforehand. Some examples in the slideshow, giving a countdown, using a first and then word. So first we are going to eat breakfast, and then instead of going to brush your teeth, we are actually going to clean up this mess together that maybe they spilt something or some form of something. Just giving them that idea that normally they're used to going to do that second activity, but there's going to be a pause in that. If there's going to be a big change in routine, such as having to leave the house to go somewhere, it's important to kind of communicate where you're going, what time you're going, what they can expect when they get there. Be very vocal about it and communicate, ask them how they feel about it, and just make sure that there's lots of open dialogue and communication so that when the transition does happen, they aren't feeling like they were not a part of that transition or they weren't a part of deciding what they were going to do. So keeping them included in the routine changes gives them that motivation to continue to go throughout the day with a bit of a difference in their regular schedule. So an important question I get often that I just want to address before we continue to the end of the slideshow is oftentimes people ask if reinforcement is bribery because you're kind of asking your child to do something, and then you're giving them something to do that behavior. Reinforcement is not bribery when depending on the form you're using it. So you want to make sure when you are using reinforcement, um, you're doing it because you want that behavior to benefit that child. You're doing it to teach that child a specific skill or behavior that is going to benefit them overall. The difference between reinforcement and bribery is with bribery, you are asking them to complete something that is going to benefit yourself. So such as if the example down below, I will buy you a candy bar if you stop crying. The child is trying to communicate their behavior to you and they're expressing themselves. And you're using a form of bribery of saying, okay, stop crying, here you go, here's something to stop the crying. That doesn't benefit the child at all because they're trying to express themselves. So it's important to kind of take a step back, and when you are asking a child to do something, ensure that it's going to benefit them. And ensure that when they are completing it, they know the reason why they are completing it. Because sometimes children can look at things such as chores and go, I don't want to do that. It is going to benefit them in the long run, though, because later on in life, there are certain chores that they're going to have to complete regularly. So just ensuring that there's that positive communication about why they're doing what they're doing, and ensuring that you're not bribing them, essentially. And then one thing I just wanted to briefly visit before we come to the end of this PowerPoint is just talking about energy preservation for parents. So oftentimes when communicating with people, I hear that they're guilty of allowing their child screen time or allowing their child specific activities that may be judged upon, such as putting on a movie or having them sit at the computer for an hour and a half. Um, it's okay to do that if you need to take a moment to step back and give yourself some time to kind of debrief and do something you need to do. Now, obviously, you're not going to put your child in front of a movie for 10 hours, but it's okay to pop on a movie, to just take a step back and go, okay, this is an exhausting day. I need to go do something that's for me. So just knowing that energy preservation is very important for you. Um, Other things you can do is create a boredom basket so that if something pops up and you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed, there's lots of things that they can pull out and do without you necessarily having to go through step-by-step instructions or having to be there to help them out. Outside time is also one thing that could benefit the child because they can go in the backyard and kind of play, and you can have a moment to yourself as well. So I just wanted to get that out there as well because we are home every day working from home, and we're with our families and children, and it can get kind of chaotic once in a while when you're together for long hours on end. And you know, and especially with siblings as well when they're together long hours on end. So just giving activities that can be done independently and certain activities that can be done as a family to kind of give that space and then come back together and communicate. Um, so that is the PowerPoint for routines at home and kind of creating routines. And I just wanted to let you guys know as well that the special needs inclusion team is still here. We are operating through Zoom meetings and communicating through email and phone calls. So if you do need any support throughout this time, we are here, and this is our contact information if you do need to reach us.
Thanks, Brianna.
Yeah, no problem. I'm just going to
Yeah, it
stop.
was great. Yeah.
Thank you.
I wish I should have told Karina to come and watch it because she could probably have used some of the strategies if
Yeah.
parents had questions for her. Are you sharing your slides at
Yes.
all?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I have actually recorded what I just went over.
Okay.
Um,